you made the jump from city to the Great Plains. We can talk about it a bit later, but my family on my dad's side is from Wyoming, and being Japanese American, they experienced tremendous racism and setbacks there. I mean, a lot of, but they did work with their hands. I mean, my father grew up on a farm with an outhouse. They didn't have indoor plumbing until 1957, and his grandfather was a engineer on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. He was a machinist who refined wheels of these giant steam locomotives, and that's something that I grew up with. Was kind of like this. Yes, you can read books, but you always have to have respect for people who make things or do things. They might know more than you, in spite of all your schooling. And I think I'm very grateful for my father for that. And I think, and also the trauma of Japanese American internment, which my father did not directly experience because they did not live on the West Coast, but there was always that fear. But
well, you told me this story. There were internment camps near where your family lived, but they were only putting, you said people on the Pacific Coast were going into them,
which was 90% of most of the Japanese American population. It was basically a land grab, actually kind of similar in that the Japanese Americans on the West Coast, in places like California and Washington State, especially in California, they had taken kind of third-rate farmland and turned into very productive truck farming. And of course you have racism, but there's also this feeling of like, how did these people who we just can't stand, how come they gain so much prosperity of this land no one wanted? So come Pearl Harbor was like, this is the moment. We can now take it. And
the Ken Burns documentary on the war has some called The War, and we're doing some great stuff on this. And there's these portraits of these families that had this land taken. And in some cases, you do have like neighbors who ran it well and actually, and the land went back to people. And a lot of people, it's just a straight up land grab.
Oh, it was you had 36 hours to sell everything you had and show up and report to the racetrack and be taken by a steam-driven train to some godforsaken place near my dad's hometown of Worland, Wyoming, or in the places in Utah that were like the least desirable land in the country when it came to growing anything. But my family was spared that fate because we did not live on the West Coast. There was some talk in the town, apparently, well, how come these people, the Ujifusa families, how come we don't take their farm away? But I think that actually does tie in with what happened in the Bronx, a lot of New York City, and on the West Coast of kind of a land grab. And often when they say it's not about the money, it's totally about the money. And I think there was a huge reluctance on the part of the liberal establishment backing FDR to defy FDR and a lot of the people around him, because he was the hope and savior of so many of the countries, so much of the country's working class. I mean, the Roosevelt coalition was born and bred in New York City and kind of ran New York City through the LaGuardia term all the way to the 50s. But during the war, there was this no one wanted to defy FDR. I mean, ultimately, I believe without him, we would not have won the war. I think he was a great wartime president, but this was a tremendous stain. And even his own attorney general, Francis Biddle, when he did finally sign off on it, he said, we're going to regret this. We really are.